I like it. So welcome to this podcast. I'm here with Josh, the Joshua Holmes of Ethode. I guess I compete with you during my day life, right? So we're competitors, but not really. I guess let's set the table. What do you do all day?
Nothing. Yeah, no, I don't do anything.
So he has at least two companies.
No, we have two companies.
And then he pretended that he was going to move to Atlanta at one point.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't really my fault. and actually, I'm still telling people it's happening because I'm trying to will it into existence.
Sure,
I still want to be down there.
So tell us about Ethode.
All right. So Ethode was our first company. It's a software development arm, and we don't do. For the most part, we don't do small websites for businesses. We do integration work, right? So if you have an ERP system or you're a higher ed university that wants to get the brand new version of PeopleSoft and you want all that data online, we're the ones who do all the software development work to bring that to life, right?
Yeah.
So they're bigger projects, they're more involved, they're more coding than design and UX, right? They're the nerd stuff, the fun stuff, right?
The stuff you don't want to do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And over the course of 10 years, it became clear that no one wants to manage their crap anymore.
Yeah.
So we became the arm to manage it, whether it was Amazon or AWS or wherever it was. And that birthed our second company, which is LightSpeed. So we have 2 data centers here in Ohio.
Right.
And we compete only in that market, right? We compete in that market until you buy us. And then
you would be so lucky.
And then that business has kind of spurred some other weird odd services that we do that are kind of interesting and taking off. But it's very different than project work, right?
Sure.
Project work, you get the ebbs and flows, and
you get that
data
monthly
center,
reoccurring.
That's exactly the case.
Yeah.
Well, and it frees us up to do fun stuff, right? If we wanted to create our own product instead of doing project work, at some point we'll be there, right?
So what kind of project would you create?
So my business partner has an idea for basically it's a combination of a CRM, project management software, and Slack all together.
Okay.
Which is being done now. So we're not going to do that apparently.
Right.
But things like that help our industry are sorely needed still yet. And it's very fragmented.
Yeah.
And you wind up having to have 1,000 APIs to tie these things together.
Sure.
And it's still cumbersome for someone who's not techie. So we haven't solved the problem yet. We haven't solved it.
What are other ideas you can give me so I can steal them?
So
because I have more resources.
Hold on, let me get my best ideas out of here, and I'll just give you all of them so we don't do them. No.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll tell you, we actually have one that I'd love to revisit if we ever get time. We have the branding and domain. It's called Food Truck Friend, and it's basically the Uber for food trucks, right?
Fair.
So do you actually know where food trucks are today?
Walnut Creek in downtown Cleveland.
No, that's tomorrow. See, this is the problem. Right? If you want a food truck and you want Barrios right now in Cleveland, you have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's exactly right.
So you're going to GPS, you're going to chip all the cars, all the food trucks?
Not only chip them, it's going to be in their phone, right? Yeah. So what happens is you say, I got an office of 30 people.
Yeah.
I want food trucks here. You blast it out into a certain radius, and food trucks will say, yeah, I'll be there, and you can select which ones you want. Or maybe only accept one, and then they come at the time you specify, and they sit in the parking lot, and they'll come because they know 30 people want lunch. They're not going to come because Mike wants lunch. They're going to come because all of Blue Bridge wants lunch that day. And there's no way that you can hail a food truck right now. It doesn't exist. Not in Austin, not in Atlanta, not in any of the big markets. You can't do it.
That's funny. I guess that's true. I don't eat a whole lot of food trucks, so I'm not perhaps the target demographic.
I love food
for
trucks.
it.
Did I tell you I'm fat?
Yeah, you didn't tell me, but I can see it. Yeah, you don't need to see it.
Out there.
It speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But I also didn't understand Uber Eats because I'm like, why you can't just drive? I never order delivery. I just drive and grab it, right? Because that's just the way I was raised, I guess. But one time I was on a date with a person, and we ended up going to my place.
Sorry to hear that. I mean, for her.
It's a nice house. It's fine. It's clean. But without saying anything, she ordered Uber Eats and just ate in front of me. It was even more awkward. I was offended on a couple levels. One, there was just a random guy that showed up to my house with food. What did he have?
Now knows your address. Yeah.
What did he have? Steak from Longhorn Steakhouse. This girl ordered mashed potatoes, a steak, and fries, and had this laid out on
potatoes and fries.
Yeah, and laid out and just ate it without telling me. What if I was hungry? Right?
She didn't order you any.
No, she didn't. She didn't communicate at all. I just watched her eat this massive meal, like this hearty, massive meal that smelled up the whole house.
Can you please go on a second date with her just so I have some more stories?
This was months past, and that was what killed it.
It's never too late.
But the other piece that killed it for me was she spent $80 on the between the steak, the mashed potatoes. There's calamari as well. I forgot about that. So she's just eating all this food and just. Like
That's
we're trying to watch a movie. Well, I was watching a movie. She was.
You're watching her eat now at this point.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, yeah, dating's scary these days.
Yeah.
Because
I don't date anymore. So
yeah, absolutely. Because you're married successfully.
10 years.
Yeah.
I married up. Had 4 kids.
Yeah.
No one wants me now besides
Yeah.
my wife. Right.
Which
I've
is
gotten fat. I
shocking.
got 4 kids.
Yeah.
I have my hair now though.
Yeah.
Right. Like most guys my age are losing their hair.
Yeah.
I still got it.
I'm gonna
See?
get one of them transplants. Fill this out.
I even got the hairline. Like it all
Yeah.
stayed. I
Yeah.
don't know what I did to deserve it. I don't eat right. I drink and I don't sleep. But somehow.
Is your dad bald?
All his hair. Every bit of it. My grandfather the same way. Even on my mom's side, my grandfather who's 81.
Yeah.
Sorry, 91. All his hair.
Adopted. Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. That's all I have going for me.
So what's in Atlanta? Why do you want to move there?
So we looked at Atlanta. It was fortuitous. We looked at Atlanta because Atlanta Tech Village had just opened. And we loved the idea of having a legitimate co-work space in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
So we went down to Atlanta because we want to look at the Tech Village. And it just so happened there was a hackathon that weekend. Right? And we thought, well, we got a bunch of coders.
Sure.
Let's do a hackathon. So we brought most of the office down with us. Out of 32 companies, we came in second, won a bunch of money, and stayed down there for like another 8 days on Airbnbs.
Sure.
And just toured the city and fell in love with it, mainly because of the tech community. I mean, the traffic sucks, the air pollution sucks, you know, the people aren't as nice as they are here in Ohio. But the tech community, you could tell that they were growing. Like they had a plan and it was working. And you had Georgia Institute of Technology that was funneling into the tech scene, and it was a very exciting place to be if you're in tech. It reminded me of San Francisco before it was what it was now, right? And so we still really like that market. I'd love to be in that market. We've had some deals fall through that have kept us from being there, but ultimately we would love to have an office down there. Like it's still our goal. I'll be down there again either later this month or in January, still talking with some of our tenant clients that will be down there in our first build.
What is Atlanta doing that Cleveland is not?
So Atlanta did something that I see happening now a little bit in Cleveland. Atlanta from the top down, every political office, every office that had money, grants, pull, power, anything, all got on the bandwagon of we can be a tech hub. Right? Like it wasn't like they all fought against each other and then tried to have their own. Well, right. Like, and there's no fiefdoms. Like they just all decided very quickly and cohesively that like we could be the Silicon Valley of the East. And when you have everyone in the same direction, you move very quickly, you do cool things. And I still believe Cleveland could do that, Akron could do that, Northeast Ohio as a whole could do that, but we have to get rid of the infighting and fiefdoms. Like there's still everyone trying to stake their claim instead of saying as a group we could do some really cool things together.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I think Atlanta's done that really well. And they've attracted VC there for tech. People don't know that 10 years ago there was no VC there for tech.
Yeah.
There was no tech community. It was a financial town.
Right.
They processed credit cards. Like that was their claim to fame, was every credit card you touched processed went through Atlanta.
Yeah.
But because of that, they were able to say, well, this is all going tech related. Let's jump on this bandwagon before someone else does. And now they're the fintech capital of the world and other tech things now.
Yeah.
And because of that, they went out to all these different states that already had good VCs, so New York, California, etc. And they said, come here, like we'll get you here. We'll pay for you to be here and you see why. The Tech Village, you'll go there on a pitch night, and you're shoulder to shoulder. Now you know who the money is because they have a notebook and they're in the suit, and they still don't know what an iPad is, right? Right? Like
they've wealthed their way out of innovation.
That's right. They fly in on their private jet
right.
to the Hartsfield Airport, and then they fly out that night.
Yeah.
And when people locally had money, saw that people are flying in and making money in Atlanta, then the local money started to get in the scene.
Yeah.
Right now we're at a point where we have people interested in tech. You got Jumpstart, Flash Starts, etc. We've had some success, like CoverMyMeds was huge. That was great for the area.
Right to Columbus.
They did. But if you run a fund and you made money off of that deal,
it was a win.
That was a win. And we need more of those. Even if they move out, if those funds can get larger, we can now fund more deals. Or even better, we get a startup that's in Cincinnati or Youngstown or wherever, and they need that Series B, and they can't get a Series B or Series A somewhere.
Yeah.
If our funds are big enough here, we can get them to come here. Because when you see funds move, they're not, or companies move, it's not moving because they can't find seed most of the time. Sometimes not even round A. It's round B and C that we don't have. So if we can get that, I think we already have the seed here. Which we need to keep them here. CoverMyMeds, if they could raise $20 million a year like that, they would have stayed probably.
I agree.
You know, but we can't do that here. That's half of Jumpstart's entire fund, and they're the biggest fund in Cleveland. They got a $40 million fund. Imagine dumping half your entire fund into one company. And that's our problem, is that the companies that really succeed, that go to $1 billion market cap like that,
they need more.
They need way more than we got here.
So, and it's interesting that you didn't announce Bounce Hub as one of those.
I love Bounce Hub.
I know you love Doug. So
yeah,
I see you
do.
talking with him all the time.
And we go to Bounce every single week. We're there every week. Yeah.
Doug works in the shadows.
So Doug is like my older spirit animal.
Okay.
Like Doug gets his like something in his mind, and he's gonna bug you until you just give him what he wants. Right? And like that's kind of how I operate. I kind of like, I have 20 years of tech, but I kind of have that salesman background.
Sure.
And so that's just how you get stuff done.
Yeah, he'll bird dog you when he wants you.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So you're at Blockland. You were here last year.
Yep.
What is your opinion of Blockland, as a conference, as a community, as a city block?
Well, there's a couple pieces to unpack there.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think blockchain has an important piece in the technology future, whether that's in Cleveland or not. It's going to be a piece of the financial world for a long time. I think there are other applications of it that make a lot of sense. We saw those slides yesterday about we're coming down off the hype cycle. I disagree. I still think we're in the hype cycle right now. I still think there are emerging technologies that people want to apply it to, and that square peg's not going to fit in those round holes.
Sure. Okay, I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
So I still think we need to come to terms with what is really the best use of this technology. And then the second piece is, it may not be the right fit now, but with some alterations, it could be a miraculous fit for certain things. If we identify just those two pieces and stop fiddling with all these other things that we'll never fit for, we'll be more productive, right?
Sure.
So that's how I feel about it. So I don't think it's a fad, but I do think we're still at the top of the hype cycle. I like that we have Blockland here because it puts the focus on Cleveland as a startup and tech hub. Ultimately, do I think we'll become the blockchain capital of the United States? Maybe not.
But what does that
I think
even
it gets
mean?
us where we need to go.
There's no, like, I feel like blockchain is a way to do things. I look at it almost as like a language, and there's no one that's like trying to be the C# capital of the United States, right?
Well,
it might be a weird comparison, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
I would parallel it with autonomous driving cars in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I mean, any city could have done that. It's a ubiquitous technology, but for whatever reason, they said, we're going to put the stake in the sand. We think that we could be the perfect city for this. And they got the money there for that. They got the VC there. Then they reached out to all the major universities in the United States that were trying to get into that field. And they gave money to attract those companies to Pittsburgh. And then when they had the momentum, the bigger companies like Google, et cetera, they jumped on board. Right, so they had a plan and they enacted it. It worked really well, and you're right. Any city can do that.
Right.
But they did it before someone else did. Right.
Right. They made their claim.
That's exactly right. And if you're in, say, virtual reality, like there's a ton of jobs out in Silicon Valley because that's where the company's migrated to. Right. But you could do that with virtual reality applications. You could do that with blockchain. Right. No one other than probably Wyoming is trying to become like the blockchain capital of the United States. Like Wyoming is like unabashedly saying, we think this could be our future as a state.
Right.
Well, like,
what else do they have going on though? Right.
Farming,
agriculture, hard ag. Well, I mean, people keep on talking about, to me at least, that Cleveland wants to transition from being manufacturing to being health tech.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that we'll never be able to compete with like Boston as far as being health tech. But our manufacturing is still pretty solid. I work with a lot of manufacturers on the data center side. They're all like doing stuff.
Yep.
They're all innovative. I don't know many, all the big players in Cleveland are really innovating everything from their machining to how they communicate to how they're just transmitting files. Like, they're paying attention. And I'd like to find more ways to integrate with that.
Well, there's a couple of cool things to think about with manufacturing and the distribution sector, because they go hand in hand, right? Logistics and manufacturing. You build it, it's got to go somewhere. With Amazon here in Northeast Ohio, there's been a massive uprising in new companies building distribution centers here. We're uniquely positioned in Cleveland because between Detroit and Pittsburgh, or New York, whichever big city you want to choose, there's all this fiber that runs through the corridor just south of the lake. And for a long time, it was just unused pipe. But it's in our backyard. So many cities, they don't have that, right? You can look at big cities across the map between here and California, and there's nothing there in terms of fiber optic connectivity. And that's a huge barrier. So, I mean, I've been in Northeast Ohio my whole life, and I've always felt like our position between those two major metros puts us in a position where we can utilize that infrastructure if we ever got people here, right?
Well, and a lot of that infrastructure also has to do with, being so close to Case
That's
being
right.
within Cleveland and their involvement in the early stages of the internet.
That's exactly right.
And that
the 100 gig pipes that we had here for one community that is now Everstream and all that stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful community effort for that.
Yeah.
But, we really need to leverage these resources.
I mean, they're here. I mean, they're here and they're inexpensive. When I go down to Atlanta and we talk about what I'm paying here for fiber optic bandwidth and some of the things that we have, they're astounded.
Have you looked at the Columbus market for telco though?
So Telco Market in Columbus, at least for us, right? Because we're a lot smaller than Blue Ridge. For us, there's more capital required to be in Columbus because it's a saturated market. So you have to penetrate it with a much more vibrant, big facility that's impressive, and you have to have a lot more dollars towards marketing. Right, so we actually focus on edge communities, right? So our first build was in Medina. No one wants to be in Medina, but guess what? We're the only data center in Medina. If you want your stuff close and you want great L2 connectivity and you want to be able to drive and pick up 20 terabytes of data, we're your only option.
But you're you're also like the mafia of Medina data, because anytime I've tried to come near your little territory, they're like, we're covered, don't worry.
We got this.
We got fiber on Route 18. And I'm like, I wonder who that's through, right?
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Enjoy your farmlands.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
And it's our model. Like, we're doing Atlanta, we joke, we say Atlanta, but the county we're building in is just like Medina. It's south, and it's a very fast-growing county, but there's not much there besides fields right now. But there's a ton of companies like Medina County that you'd never know are headquartered there that are screaming for data and data center.
Yeah.
And so for us, we go towards those edge markets where we can build much smaller but higher quantity number of facilities. And they're fulfilling services that you simply can't normally get in an edge market. And you start to look at IoT, autonomous driving, et cetera, you're going to see more and more data being pushed out to these little edge data centers. They're not huge hitters, right? They're not ginormous, but they're very close to where everything has to be processed. And so because of that, they become, as you said, a monopoly.
Right.
And it's not, it doesn't mean that you can take advantage because their budgets are smaller, but it does mean that I don't have 30 companies that I'm competing with for that same business, right?
Right.
So you're doing a lot more business with a handshake. You're not doing a heavy amount of marketing. And then, of course, they're sticky clients because
where are
they going to go, right? Yeah. And so it makes for a good model, but even better, where are you going to work? Most of the communities, where are you going to work if you want to work in data centers?
Yeah.
We're your only option. So if you want a data center job, you don't have to drive to downtown Cleveland. You don't have to drive to Akron.
Right.
We're like a 5-minute drive from any of those cities if you want to go away from the cities and into us.
Sure.
So like that model works well for us, but it's a slow go. It takes longer to land those clients. They don't have big sales. They're usually 1 or 2 racks or 2 or 3 VMs at a time. So it's a slower build cycle, but it's much more sustainable over time, I think. So
I'm surprised you don't try to steal more of our employees.
I don't know many of your employees. I don't know many at all.
Yeah, well, you know one. But
I knew one because he lived
in your area,
the county.
and you know what? Good on you. You never tried to take him from us.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Business ethics is a big deal to us, right?
Right.
So you step on local competition in a way that's not ethical, and it will come back to you. Northeast Ohio is a small region. It might seam big.
No, it's small.
It's a small region, and what you do gets around.
For sure.
It gets around.
Yeah,
so
people talk.
They do.
True. You have a good reputation.
I appreciate that.
The other thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about is the kind of juxtaposition of software development and data center work. I mean, what kind of synergies are there? I mean, they're both tech, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you build it, you got to put it somewhere, right?
Sure.
So for us, our biggest lead-in of data center clients are software projects that we've built.
And you host them on their own little private cloud, right?
It depends, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a solution Bluebridge offers, by the way.
No.
This isn't a Bluebridge podcast. You're good.
No, we have a lot. Let me put it this way: we actually have a lot of clients that would never have found us or chose us
Yeah.
Had it not been the fact that we built their project and then
Sure.
did a contract to maintenance it, secure it, grow it, scale it, all that kind of stuff, right? And so for them, it's a trusted relationship that they're really buying. They don't know if it's in our data center. They don't know if we put it on Amazon. They don't know if we put it in Bluebridge.
Right.
What they know is that we pick up the phone if anything's ever wrong, and they take care of it. And that's really what they're after. Because, nowadays everyone just assumes that with cloud virtualization or co-location that it's just going to be up. Like, we've gotten to the point with this industry that uptime is so good compared to 10 years ago that people just assume you're going to do a good job.
Yeah.
So now deals are a lot more about trust, emotional feel. Did I feel like this person is honest? Do I feel like that they're going to be in business in 5-10 years? It's a lot more of a relationship sale than it is a technical sale anymore.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you're in a data, like migrating is such a insurmountable cost for most of these companies, especially in the mid-market where it's like you can't migrate away.
That's
so
right.
You got to make sure that wherever you go, they're going to treat you right.
That's exactly right.
Now, when you started out as software first, right?
Yep.
So you're building software. Why do you think it makes more sense for you to own a data center that then you host the cloud apps yourself as opposed to going to like an AWS?
Well, so we did a lot of cost analysis. If you want to know the real soup, right? Like, we had like 10% margins on all our virtualization. So it was tiny because we were basically marking up Amazon, et cetera. Now, they have plans now they didn't have then.
Right,
now they
right.
can cut like 30% off their pricing for partners
and
like us.
Azure has some pretty competitive things too that I've seen. I'm like, wow.
But they didn't have that kind of stuff 10 years ago. We had stuff at Rackspace before they sold off their cloud infrastructure.
Yeah.
We had a lot of stuff at Liquid Web and you name it. I can't count the number of data centers we had stuff in. None of them offered us discounts, reseller stuff, nada, right? So we were taking their full-blown price, and we still had to make it palatable because they're not dummies. They can Google and see what hosting pricing is. So we mark it up 30-40%. They're going to be like, why am I paying you 30-40%, right?
Yeah.
It's just a server. And so we had thin margins, and the goal was pretty simple. We knew that we could run our own virtualization stacks in our own data centers, and we could get the margins to the point where they're extremely healthy, right? Because you can't grow a business on 10% margins. I mean, the volume you have to have is just outrageous. So our margins are extremely healthy on virtualization, but it allows you to do some things that you couldn't do otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So we reinvest into some technology we would never have before and start to play with different markets. We're really heavy into, as you probably know, the cryptocurrency mining market. We have a 4 megawatt facility here in Ohio.
Yeah, you let those people into your data center. We don't.
Yep. And we also have, so I have an entire division that is doing like heavy compute power stuff. So like film rendering, CAD stuff, all heavy GPU-based cloud virtualization stuff. Those are all things that, if we were riding off of a 10% profit margin on those services, you can't reinvest in that hardware and play and narrow it down and then market it, right? You're kind of stuck just selling what comes through your door. So getting on our own system where we could get the profit margins where they need to be put us in a position to start going after different business.
No, I definitely get that. How has that crypto mining hosting changed in the last 5 years? Is it still worth it for them?
Yeah. It's becoming industrialized, right? Like it's growing up, I would say it, right? You had a bunch of hackers throwing crap in their closet at dorms, getting free dorm electricity.
I put my desktop that was mining with the GPU underneath the desk at Cisco's headquarters.
There you go. And that's how it started. It's mature now, though. Like, real money has flown into real businesses who had said, if we do this smarter at a bigger scale, we can get margins that no one else is getting, right? And that's where we come in, right? So we're doing facilities that are now not just in the megawatt quantities, but tens of megawatts, and we're doing electrical contracts at a price where you almost can't touch it. And so now when we're selling these power and space and maintenance contracts to these mining companies, when we're selling 2, 3, 4 megawatts at a time, and after it's all said and done, they don't have to have staff. They don't have to pay for infrastructure. They don't have to know anything. They just find out what they want to buy and they send it to us. And they actually wind up operating cheaper than they would if they did it themselves. So that market is all going towards that path. You'll see very few at-home miners in 5 more years. It's all going to be industrialized, and it's going to be in the hands of big players like us. That's my opinion.
So you think that's going to be a growing segment of your business, then?
Yeah. for the next 5 years, I envision it getting to a very specific size. We have some stuff on our roadmap. We still have a lot of plans for our virtualization to continue growing, because I don't want one service to be so big that that's a big part of our portfolio, and if we lost it, it'd be a problem, right?
Yeah.
So the next facility that we're doing, a good portion will be high density crypto and AI rendering. And then high compute, so anything that's heavy bandwidth, heavy electrical, but low mission critical.
Okay.
And then that facility also has a small portion that's going to be dedicated to mission critical, but a much smaller portion. Mm-hmm. After that facility, I foresee most of our focus will be primarily growing out our virtual infrastructure. And we have a couple states and data centers that we've targeted that rather than own the data center, we'll actually wind up buying racks in them.
Same. Smart. I think that's the way to go, because as footprints start shrinking more and more, it makes less and less sense to have these 22,000 square foot data centers.
Well, and right? So what winds up happening is you get a data center in Wyoming, for instance, right? Where you're on a Zayo pop, they got lots of bandwidth, and there's nowhere near enough business to sustain the racks they're losing to virtualization in, say, Cheyenne, where the major data centers are. So for us, it makes a lot more sense rather than compete against them.
Yeah.
And everyone, is now a race to the bottom. Let me buy racks from them. Now instead of $1,800 a month for that rack in Cheyenne, I'm paying $900, and they're giving me a full gig of bandwidth, in that rack.
Right. Yeah. And it's all AV power. It's sometimes better than what you can afford to build. Right.
That's right.
So
I mean, for us, our data center doesn't do a ton of rack colo. But we get a lot of like quarter racks in 1U, and they're guys who are doing like VPN as a service, or they're doing caching layers for things like Cloudflare.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a lot more stuff like that coming in than people who need a full rack.
Yeah, we see a lot of people that have a virtualized environment, and then they just want to they have one physical Meraki that they want to put in, or they want to do a fully virtual environment with us, but they need an extra appliance for their Velo cloud optimization, things like that, and you have to be able to accommodate that. Otherwise, they will just go to an AWS, because what's the point of going to a cloud out of a data center locally?
Well, and I will say this, so I don't know about other states, but Ohio has some regulations about how data backup has to be handled now on the municipal and county level.
Yeah.
And not that this was the intent of any of these laws,
yeah,
but it did ruin some of those municipalities' backup strategies, right? So we have actually seen, we've seen customers come in where realistically they need to be on private fiber. They're no longer shoving that data to an S3 bucket.
Right.
They need to utilize a data center that can give a non-internet pipe back to us. So we do see those sort of deals where, again, it's not mission critical. I mean, we're the insurance policy, we're the backup location, right? But they need that private fiber to us, and they're getting a quarter rack. They get a small SAN and a switch. But again, those are sticky deals that'll stay around for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, they're married to you at that point.
And that's kind of our market, right? Yeah. So it's. But, the market will change in 10 years.
Yeah.
Who knows what stuff will be going after, whatever people need.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at how our data center has shifted dramatically in the last 5 years, I imagine we're just going to have more telco pops and more, AT&T, like Verizon, Sprint build-outs for cell phone towers, everyone and their mother wants to put an antenna on our roof.
Yeah.
But
the IoT world is pushing the edge data center movement.
Thankfully, something, because that's replacing these large footprints that are just no longer available.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at QTS down in Atlanta, like 1 million square foot.
Yeah.
Like
they're
a successful company, but in 10
years,
years, I can't imagine that's going to work.
I'm surprised that it's working now.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, even looking at enterprise level footprints, how big are they? And then with the revolution of solid state SANs, they fit petabytes now in 2Us.
That's exactly right.
How are you gonna?
Not just SSD, because that's a huge game changer in terms of power usage and space.
And you can throw a SAN. You used to be able to. It used to take two people. Now it's a one-person lift.
You just chuck it like a football.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. And we'll throw just as good as Mayfield did.
It's not hard to do.
I do like Mayfield. But I think the Browns have some issues to deal with.
Hey, they're better than last year.
They are. That's all we can say. They're better than last year.
It's incremental growth.
I know. I would love to see some success for Mayfield and the Browns. I think we have systemic issues that we'll never fix, though. Even if you get great people in, I think it would take some serious turnaround from the top down to get some change. But
good change takes time. I think.
It does.
I think I think that it's just going to have to be a cultural change more than anything else. But
Yeah,
I'm also not a football manager, so neither are you.
I know.
So
this is the God, I don't make money on sports.
right. Yeah, you just lose money, right?
That's right. That's right.
You smell like you have a gambling problem.
I've never gambled ever.
Oh, really?
But can you imagine though if some of these tech companies that are all online gambling for sports?
Yeah.
What's the FanDuel?
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine if all these states started to relax on sports gambling?
Yeah. Oh, that'd
be unreal.
That'd be what an industry. That and cannabis would be like the two industries. But back to, the lottery and gambling, I think, is the best use case for crypto today. I really do. Like that's it. That's where it should start and end for me, because I'm like, it's money, so you get that right. Currency aspect of it, and there's no trust. Like there's
no fraud.
That is the definition of like a fraudulent, trustless environment.
That's right.
That's the use case for me. Like the smart contracts are okay. I'm behind it, but like, give me a lottery on crypto. I'm
a dissenting voice on smart contracts for most people. So here's the thing: 20 years in software development, you can miscode a smart contract, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk about the fact that blockchain is immutable, right?
Yep.
What happens when that smart contract, you find out there's a bug in it? Does immutability sound great now?
Yeah.
That immutability?
Right.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't sound so great now, right? So now you have to have a system how do you append contracts now, right?
Right.
Like, what is the process for correcting them now? Smart contracts are good, but there are legions of programmers that are getting paid large amounts of dollars reviewing code smart contracts because there's no liability insurance to cover that kind of stuff when it's wrong.
But you also have to, again, this goes back to the conversation we had before the podcast, where it's, we built the technology and now we're trying to find the solution.
Yes.
You need a problem, and then you build technology to solve that, right?
That's
right.
Not,
and that's, I feel like that's the hype that hasn't died, right?
I think there's a refinement process going on. So, and I'll say this because, I grew up, a late 80s, early 90s, kid who loved the internet. Like, from the second I heard about the internet and
AOL
computers,
Teen Chat was your game.
Before
man.
that,
yeah,
we're talking bulletin boards like modems you had to put a phone on and dial.
Hell yeah.
Like, I loved the idea of the internet. But I do remember back then. I remember all the obstacles that would be part of a conversation. Well, no one's ever going to buy books online, right? They want to touch it. Or, man, with the speed of that, who's going to watch TV on the internet, right? Who wants to get their newspaper on the internet? And we look at it now, we just kind of laugh, right?
Yeah.
But it was a refinement process. Someone said, I want to do something bad enough, let me find a way and throw money at it. And they were able to make it a thing. I do think within the blockchain realm, there's going to be a lot of money in the next 10 years that are going to make blockchain do things it can't do now. And that's going to open up use cases for it. But there are some things that it will just never be a good use case for,
Yeah.
Or not the best use case. There are other things that do it better.
Like databases.
So, there's a ton of people right now, at least, trying to throw data on a blockchain. And, there's no reason why you shouldn't just be using Oracle or MySQL or something, right? Like,
same camp.
The blockchain doesn't actually fit the need that you're serving.
Well, even from like a cybersecurity compliance standpoint, like, the fact that it's on the ledger is a problem. Like you also have like GDPR.
Well, it depends if it's permissioned or non-permissioned, right? If it's public, it is a huge issue for security. If it's something like Hyperledger where you have permission channels, now you're in a position where it's no different than a database where you've given out API access, right? So you now have control over who can see what. There's a centralized agent that control who can see which channel, and then those channels are secured with one endpoint. That's it.
But it still is a dissenting voice from the right to be forgotten, verbiage that you see in the California Act and GDPR.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. We talked about this yesterday, the right to be forgotten, because one of the comments that was made in one of the sessions was that you can revoke access. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't revoke access if you've given access to an API that then someone downloaded that data. They've got that data. Now, you can revoke someone else from seeing it in the future.
Or downloading it again.
That's right, but that data could be propagated. Once I see it for the first time, if you tomorrow say, I don't want anyone to see this data, I've already downloaded it.
Yeah.
My company, who now wants to use it for marketing purposes, will share it with all these different affiliates. That data's out there now. So, it's not really fixing, generally, it's not fixing the propagation of data once it's been given out. I don't think anything fixes that. And people are promising that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it doesn't actually fix that problem.
It's the biggest concern in cybersecurity now when you're building a solution, and it's like, well, now I have to find a way to blow up data.
Yep.
And
self-destructing data. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you police that?
And that's exactly that's what I describe when I say we're still in that hype cycle. Like we still have these promises that are insurmountable, and then some that we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand which ones you can find solutions for, and which ones would be, a foolish waste of time to find solutions for. I probably dissent with you a little bit in that I see bigger uses for blockchain. Even my CIO, my CIO, Mark was the CIO at Cleveland Hopkins for 10 years, was part of the Cleveland Municipal School District for, 8, 9 years.
And now he works for you?
He's a phenomenal human being. He's a great guy.
Wow, really fell from heaven.
But he's definitely a dissenter on blockchain. I think he sees it as a very small niche in the market. In 10 years from now, the hype will be gone, and 10% of organizations will maybe use it. I see a bigger place for it.
Like 12%.
I think, this is just my opinion,
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is the financial system is going to be completely upended by blockchain. Now, if it doesn't upend medical, I'm not going to be surprised, right? If it doesn't upend, you name it,
Legal,
I won't be
real
surprised.
estate, things like that.
All right, so I would say this. I think government, logistics, manufacturing, and financial are the big targets for it. That it's gonna do a really good job of solving some problems that aren't solved right now. And a big part of that solving is actually in the distribution of the data and custody of the data. So we're doing projects in Mexico City. I've talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of the problems that we're solving, I've done software for 20 years. There's just no way to solve it without the blockchain, right?
Okay.
It can't be done. Unless you really want to bastardize something, right? So now you're going back to square peg and a round hole.
You need blockchain.
Yeah. So again, there's those great use cases. There are a much smaller number of great use cases, but a few of those use cases are big industries. Yeah. Finance is one. Finance is one. So if you go to Venezuela, you go to Cairo, and I could name so many countries. They're all paying with cryptocurrency, overwhelmingly.
For sure. It's hard to get a good scope of crypto when you're in America.
Yes.
We don't need it. It's just funny money to us. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
from a currency
maybe
standpoint.
an investment, right? That's people look at it as I'm going to go to the moon and be rich.
Yeah.
But no one thinks about it as I want to transact daily in it. But I'll give you a great example. And I won't name any names, but one of the universities here in Cleveland, we're in talks to get them to accept cryptocurrency for tuition payments. Mm-hmm. And they came to us for this problem because they have a lot of Asian students who are studying engineering programs, and they're from countries that got into Bitcoin far before we did, right, as a nation. And for them to take it and convert it to local currency is a 46% tax. So it's actually much better for them to spend it than to convert it and spend it. And so certain universities, and that's our second highest vertical is universities, we hear this complaint. We have students, Josh, and they want to spend crypto here. We don't know how to accept it. We didn't even know how to accept it and do it legally. So what can we put together? And so there are great use cases where people want to transact in it, but you don't normally see it amongst American citizens because most of us aren't holding it, wanting to use it. But if you're in a country where your currency is junk, it's a different story. Yeah. Or you got into it early and you're holding a ton of it, right? You're a Bitcoin millionaire, right?
Right.
Where are you going to spend that money? Because if you convert it, you're going to lose a bunch of it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely going to be some big transitions in the financial space. And I said this last year because I spoke last year here on cryptocurrencies, and I'd like to next year. I didn't get a chance to this year. I was just too busy. But it's a space I play heavily in. I think stable coins are the future of blockchain financial payments, right?
Yeah.
So I think Bitcoin will be the Nokia of cryptocurrency in 10 years. It'll be a dying fad. I don't think it's going to be a big deal anymore. I think people are going to have...
But it will be impossible to smash with a hammer.
Never.
Never. Like a Nokia phone.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't. Your hammer would break. Exactly. If you tried to break a Nokia phone, forget it. The hammer's done.
Exactly.
Yeah, because those things are indestructible, like the cockroach in the nuclear holocaust. Cockroach is living. Yeah. No one else is, but that cockroach is. So are the Nokias. I used to sell cell phones. Did I tell you that?
No, I believe it, though.
For 1 year.
Salesmanship, yeah.
Yep, for 1 year, I worked for Verizon. It was my first sales job. I learned so much about how crazy people are. and how to work around the psychology of people and how to sell, you know.
Lipstick the pig, fear missing out, keeping up with the Joneses.
Well, you know,
I did a Franklin Covey seminar once.
Well, we got sent to seminars once a quarter, so I did get to see some pretty stupid
strange
stuff.
People.
Yeah.
With their strange philosophies.
But this is my favorite sale I ever made.
Yeah.
Now, I really, and everyone in retail can relate, I couldn't stand when people would arrive 1 minute before closing. Because back then, we had an ISDN modem in a mall with almost no reception, and it was half. So, like, I couldn't get reception with the phone to activate the thing half the time.
Right.
And then my modem to use Verizon's archaic system barely worked. This is an hour process to activate you a stupid phone. You come a minute before I close, I'm not getting home till midnight, right?
Right.
So I had this couple show up. So now we got 2 phones that need to be activated. And they said, where's T-Mobile? Well, Sandusky didn't have a T-Mobile. They didn't have T-Mobile towers back then.
Yeah.
I said, well, there's no T-Mobile in Sandusky. Really? Yeah, no, there's no T-Mobile. I said, what do you need? He goes, well, I saw that they have 2 free phones. I'm like, well, I got free phones. Like, okay, cool. We'll buy them. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait a second. Your entire purchase.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking massive technological differences between the companies, networks, CDMA versus GSM, like all this technical nerd stuff, because I'm a nerd, and all they really cared about was free phones.
They just want free stuff.
That's all they wanted,
People
right?
are connoisseurs of fine products.
Yep.
That's why I see everyone walking around taking all the pens and stress balls.
That's right. That was a huge learning lesson for me. Like, it showed me that people do not think the way I think as a nerd, right? Like, they're not analyzing things the way I analyze. They don't have the same personality types, and they buy differently. They buy emotionally. They buy on instinct sometimes. They buy on impulse. Like, it's just a very different, and I sell in tech, and you would think you're selling to tech people, but even them, very emotional purchases, very different purchases, fear-based purchases. Like, it's not about analysis a lot of times. It's about, I was told by upper management, I have to buy this. Like, I just feel like that 1 year of Verizon just taught me so much about people that is invaluable.
I've definitely had similar experiences. So, yeah. So I had to use the restroom, so
you should do that.
We've been talking for like an hour.
I know. It was good.
It was a good hour. I would like to have you on the podcast again.
We should
perhaps
do this.
at a different venue, like a studio. Because this is fun.
We could probably find a studio in Cleveland.
We have a studio.
You got a studio?
We do that, yeah. Where do you think we are?
You know, Bounce has a studio.
We're not going to go to Bounce. I love you, Doug, but we could. Bounce is expensive.
Bounce. It's like $10 an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we rent rooms there every single week. About $10 an hour.
We'll talk, Doug. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.